Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this lovely Sunday morning. I welcome you all to our first Coach Roundtable with Action Coach on this very special occasion of the World MSME Day, the day that we celebrate and contribute to the MSME around the world. 90% of all businesses and around 70% of jobs worldwide are come under the MSME bracket, and they play a pivotal role in stimulating the economic growth and providing employment for the vulnerable groups such as women, young entrepreneurs, and poor communities. But the current times have been even tougher on them. At Action Coach, we try to take this up as our own ownership and help them by lifting them up in whatever that way that we can. And that's why we are here today to talk about moving from post traumatic stress to past traumatic growth. And we have a power packed panel today, or rather, should I say, that we have the Action Coach assembled. So, led by Nick Fury, we have Mr. Gaurav Maria, the chairman of Franchise India, someone who has stood by the MSME industry in solidarity with them for the past 22 years. Then we have our Captain Marvel, Tabish Bibika, a lady on a mission to help the software and IT companies scale up their businesses and leading coach in the country. We have Thor, Mr. Sanjay Chakravarti, someone who's really contributed in building up the Action Coach tribe in India and now runs a successful firm in helping business owners scale up their businesses. And finally, our Iron Man, Mr. Ratish Pandey, with over 35 years in senior leadership roles, clubbing it with being a chartered accountant, an angel investor, a mentor, and now a business coach on a mission to add value to business owners across the country. Now, with this, we can start our discussion. Just to set the perspective for everybody who's watching us on various platforms, you can type in your questions. Do listen in. We will try and keep it as interactive. Of course, our panelists will be interacting amongst themselves on the most important topics today in terms of how MSME works in various aspects. Keep typing in the comments if you have any questions, comments. We will try and take them up as many as we can. And with this, I hand it over to Ratish sir to take the discussion forward from here.
Thank you, Mansi, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to this fantastic Coach Roundtable. So let me start. Mansi talked about sustainable development goals, and let me start the topic on a little bit about what do we understand about that, and how can SMEs, especially in India, work around and work towards the sustainable development goals. So, Tabish, let me throw that question first to you. What are your thoughts, sustainable development goals and MSMEs?
Well, I think, MSME forms the core backbone of any nation, not just India. I would say, we are the core backbone of the country, and it's so important that we become sustainable. And one of the most important sustainable objectives is ensuring that we make money, eradicating poverty, taking away, no, people say, why do you want to be earning a lot of money? But let me tell you, nobody is ever going to be very, very happy not having the choice to buy something, not having the choice choosing which school my kid goes to, where do I want to live, what kind of clothes I want to wear, and basically overall peace of mind. So I think one of the most important aspects is that we've got to look at how can we, create abundance for people. And that's the only thing that's going to bring sustainability across all aspects. How do we develop skills to be able to, generate more income? How do we, create overall peace and prosperity within the organizations, which is SMEs? That's the largest backbone. I think that's the number one challenge that we have, and that's the core focus. How do we generate wealth? That's my view.
Great, Tabish. Action Coach does talk about world abundance through business re-education. So really, I think you hit upon that very well. let me move over to Sanjay. Sanjay, what are your thoughts on sustainable development goals and MSMEs?
So just building on what Tavish said, the other part with the SME is or the SME landscape is job creation and wealth creation both. So the most number of jobs are in the MSME space in most countries. And once you have sustainable growth for the MSME through good practices on all aspects, whether it's sales and marketing or operations, you end up building a lot of jobs. And usually, so for every job you create, there's a family of 4 or 5 you're supporting. So when you talk about India, I think the next battle is the battle for economic freedom, if I may put it that way. We won independence many years back. The next battle is where do we take the country in terms of real GDP per person. We are sadly lacking there. I think we've even gone behind Bangladesh because of these new factors. Now, how to get this back? And with that growth of the SME and sustainable growth of the SME, we're talking, in my opinion, it's more about creating growth for them such that job creation, wealth creation happens and the GDP of the country as a whole improves. Back to you, Satish.
Great, Sanjay. And what you just said about how can we get SMEs back on track, and I can think of no other person than our franchisee man, as I call Gaurav Maria. Somebody who has worked with tens of thousands of SMEs to just throw light on how does he think of what is it that their sustainable development goals and MSMEs and how do they come together.
Thank you, Ratish. Great to be on a panel. Good morning, everyone. So, so sustenance has a very different meaning and it's changing faster than we see. What was sustenance for SME was actually earnings for the shareholders, so people who want to really make money out of their businesses and so on and so forth. So that's what's, but if you really look at now how it is changing and the new generation of MSME is changing, it's all about their consumers. It's all about the communities they serve. It's all about the environments they live in. It's all about the employees they care for. What Sanjay said, say, how do you really make sure that your employees and their livelihoods are more sustainable? And then it comes to the shareholder value. So if you really see, the approach is significantly changing, and this is how outside world is also looking at it now. Earlier, the businesses, how they created earnings for owners, business owners, how they created was the only perspective to businesses. Now it is changing significantly in terms of how you really do that. I see companies more valuable today, which are more, connected to their customers. They're more valuable if they are adding more to the communities. They're more valuable when they are talking largely about their employees and their well-being and so on and so forth. So it has a very different perspective. And this is one of the areas which I love about Action Coach, is because that's exactly what we do. We bring in those best practices which the world is adopting to Indian MSME, because Indian MSME needs even more, because our economies are based on MSMEs and they needed much more value creation and fresh thinking, how they approach these businesses and so on and so forth. So that's my take on this.
Right. Yeah. And I think since March 2020, since COVID hit the world, the care for consumers, the care for your employees, the care for well-being of everybody around really has come as tops on most people's agendas. So, Tavish, you were mentioning something. Sorry.
I just, something just struck me while Gaurav was speaking. And I was thinking, when we really look at sustainability means long term. And if you look at the way the COVID crisis has broken our backbone of the economy in multiple places, it just means we don't. Organizations internally have not been very immune. We haven't been able to build that immunity, and that's precisely why things have gone, topsy-turvy for the, lot of organizations. So those who were really strong within and had not just the best practices, has had the thinking, what Gaurav was talking about, value creation, Had we not thought of all of that earlier, there's no way we will be able to take storms when they get, we get hit against them. And that's exactly what Action Coach and what we're trying to, bring back on the table, saying, guys, we need to build that immunity. We've got to ensure that we're making organizations more sustainable. And I think that's the overall objective for everybody going forward. We've got to think really long term. Don't think about how can I pay my bills just for tomorrow. We've got to really think long term. Everybody has got to think long term.
Every business needs an action coach shield, right? To sort of go forward, right? Especially in these kind of tough times. So Gaurav, coming to you, and I think let's move to slightly meatier issues. And I think you've been truly instrumental in attracting so many businesses to the franchisee business that you're running. How have you been able to attract that capital? How do you think entrepreneurs today can attract capital and really drive their business forward? Really look at things differently, if I may.
Sure. So very important question, and I think part of a scale story for any MSME would be to attract capital on the right time. So that's even more important. The timing to me is even more important than just going out and rushing for raising capital. I call the 5+5 rule. One is unless and until a lot of people come to us also, because I run a separate investment banking business where MSME would come and say, oh, look, I'm looking to raise capital. But I always have these 5 questions for him. One, why do you want to need it? What is the need for raising that capital? How much is that need? That's very clearly to be defined. Second question is, where do you want to deploy this money for? Why? A lot of people have not very clear answers. They would say, I want to spend more money on my marketing or my popularizing my product and things like that. These are not fundamental reasons why you raise money, because raising money or attracting capital is a big responsibility. You're bringing in somebody who's banking on your business and your business idea. That's very, very important. What kind of impact? The third point would be what impact it would create on a short term and a long term. So whenever you are attracting capital, you need to define what is the whole journey of this entire thing. What kind of valuation you expect for your business? That's also important. Sometimes SMEs and MSMEs have unrealistic expectation of what they stand for. And this is one of the areas which Action Coach can work best in terms of bringing them to terms with their realistic business objectives and so on and so forth. And finally, who you really want. I mean, you want somebody who's strategic or financial. So sometimes your business is profitable, doing very well. Maybe it attract a financial investor in the business. But if somebody is not at that stage but needs more strategic, somebody who can really push that business up, bring in better distribution or so on and so forth, then you need somebody more strategic in that. So first 5 would be the 5 questions which you need to really ask an MSME and say before you even venture out to go out. And what it makes you attractive for an investor, I would say the 5 golden rules are: don't show your past, show your future. That's very, very important. Most of the times, MSMEs are so delighted about what they have done, how their father built the business and how they came through this whole journey, how many hours of life they put in. It actually has no meaning for somebody who's putting money with you. He wants to see, how can you show me the future? Where is this going now and how it needs to be done? Second, how fundamentally strong your management capability is, and this is something which I'm fan of Action Coach in that sense, because this was my first introduction on Action Coach when, the whole aspect of moving from in the business to on the business capability, how you're foundationally designed as an organization that you have much bigger capabilities and it's not too much dependent on one entrepreneur who started and having them. There's a good management capability, very well developed processes, systems, and so on and so forth. Third, to me, which I would always look at when I think is predictability of business. How the business is going to be predictable in years to come. Fourth is unlock value. Every business has some unlock value, which can really be taken out. It can be, sometimes your technology, it can be your patent, it can be anything. It can be even some advantage you're sitting on. You're sitting in a place where raw material was easily accessible. There was some unlock value which you had in the business which can be demonstrated. And finally, fifth, which MSME has been actually a weaker point for them, is overall financial discipline. How you would show that discipline, that you will look after that money well. That's also very important, because I have seen a lot of people don't invest into MSMEs at that stage because they feel that they have a lot of personal priorities over the business, right? So they are not able to attract capital. Whereas if you look at the new startup community, is able to attract. And I keep this comparison and say, older MSMEs, great businesses built by value, are not attracting capital, versus these new startups who have commercially not performed is attracting a lot of capital. And sometimes the differentiation is financial discipline, because you worry that you put in money in MSME and he's go and buy a house in Goa. He'll buy a next big car, right? So there is no financial discipline to really build the enterprise and build the value for everybody. So this is my pretty much 5+5 rule.
Good point. And it ties actually to what you talked about earlier also, that current businesses, these days, businesses are more outward looking to the consumers than really inward looking. Sanjay, in your vast experience of coaching, have you found any MSME that has raised capital or attracted capital, and what was the experience that they had?
There are a number of examples, Ratish, but just recently, I'm just giving examples not of companies that I've coached, but there's this tie-up which has happened between a company called PharmEasy with Thyrocare, which has just happened. And I was watching the program where the founder, of PharmEasy, which is a young man, and taking from Gaurav's point, about these startups. So PharmEasy is taken off and, really built some valuation. Thyrocare is that traditional business. Mr. Velumani, he came and spoke to us. He's an awesome person. But the marriage of these two is creating that huge valuation, which now PharmEasy is planning to go public in a little bit of time. So to raise that capital, this was an interesting blend of a modern business with a traditional business. That's why I just mentioned this. There are examples of plenty. In my personal experience with my clients, for example, there's a chemicals company, which is in Kurkum, and they're growing at 100% growth a year. So they'll be there at Growth Club on 30th June, but they're growing it. And they have this constraint of finances. And there are 4 directors, but getting their mindset around thinking that, okay, there are ways and means that you can raise capital. They have a pretty strong balance sheet. They're financially disciplined. All the points which Gaurav mentioned from his vast experience of, lending money to, they're in the banks are queuing up to lend them money. There's a race between different banks to lend them. Obviously, they've done their due diligence. So I see these examples where a little bit of capital infusion into that company. They're, for example, right now they're a 50 crore business, projected 50 crore. Last year they were 30 crores, 25.5 they hit. They missed by 4.5 crores. And this year they'll be 50 CR. They have the goal chalked out for 500 CR. I'm giving you a specific example, Ratish, so that it makes sense for our audience and for all of us.
Sure.
And with these guys, just a small injection of capital. And I'm trying, as a coach, with a mindset, and trying to change that into saying that, you're diluting your equity. I give them examples of Flipkart, and where the dilution was there, but Sachin Bansal, Billy Bansal made a huge fortune and the company grew because the potential of this company is humongous. It's in the contract R&D for pharmaceuticals business. They have clients, and once they get a client, it's like a marriage. There's no way the client can leave them, and no way these guys can leave the client. And they have clients, global clients now. So there are examples like this of people who, with a little bit of an injection of funds, can really so that traditional business moving to just operational leverage, making sure you're making profits, to financial leverage, going to Series A, Series B, Series C, and then funding and getting a valuation for your company. That mindset change is one thing which needs to be driven and explained. that if we can we marry marry the two, the traditional business with this the way the startups are approaching it, just like PharmEasy and Thyrocare have done, would be a very interesting way that the capital raising issues get resolved, because nowadays investors like Gaurav have become very particular about also seeing that are you profitable today, what are your numbers today, can project a very rosy picture to me, but what is the situation now? So especially post COVID, where there's so much damage being done. So I think these are some examples of. I used to one example, but there are a number of companies
Sure.
who are on that cusp, basically. Back to you.
I think Sanjay, I'll pick up on what you mentioned and what Gaurav also talked about as to what investors are looking for. Do MSMEs have financial discipline? And Tabish, I will come to you right after I've sort of set the stage for this question, because it's an interesting question. Financial discipline, if you ask MSMEs, and I coach a whole bunch of them, you ask them a question, okay, do you have a business plan for the next 3-5 years? And they look at you and say, yeah, we have some idea, but do they have a written business plan? No. You ask them the next question, okay, what are we trying to achieve in the next 12 months? 95-97% will say, well, we hope to grow so much, but really, do we have a plan? Do we have a list of strategies listed down? No. And that is where you realize that the financial discipline really, for most MSMEs, is literally living day in, day out, or at max living month in, month out, in terms of your cash flow and things like how you're going to manage your cash flow, especially in these times of crisis, and looking at how things really work around. So Tabish, in your experience, what have you experienced and you've been coaching almost for a decade. So what has been your experience in terms of the financial discipline and the financial management concepts that MSMEs really need to imbibe and apply in their businesses? What has been your experience? And if you can share with one specific example, you don't need to take names if you don't want to, but just a generic business and how things happen. Over to you.
So Ratish, let's look at I'll be fair to SMEs. Let's look at the history of how a business gets started first, and what's the mindset, where do they really come from? So I think, if plain and simple to answer to what you're saying, financial discipline, if it's about compliances and about taxation, everybody's spot on. I don't think there is a challenge there at all. Okay, we are paying taxes. We are ensuring there is compliance.
So the danda works.
It does. I mean, let's be honest. It works for all of us. It does. There are certain rules and regulations. We don't want to break them. We want to ensure that we are compliant, and by human quality, we are honest, we are obedient, and we don't want to break laws, which exists. But the rest of the other financial discipline that we're talking about, do I really know what's the forecast of the business that's going to happen? Do I really plan out my cash flows? Am I projecting what my net profitability is going to be for the next 5 years, not just today? And really, what is the value that I'm going to build, in the next decade or so, such that my company is consistently growing? So first we talk about, every SME wants to talk about dal roti, at the initial stage. So we look at, okay, am I going to be paying all my expenses? And that's all done. Okay, the expenses get paid off. Now I'm going to worry about, okay, what next? And to get to that next level, after I've paid off all of my expenses, and then I'm going to look at, okay, how do I actually now consistently build growth? Because it's the profit that's going to be pushed back into the business to build that growth. Bringing in investors' money fundamentally does not strike the vast majority of people. When you talk about bringing in money, it's always debt. Because we are attempting to live the business as if it's a lifestyle business, right? I'm going to make sure that I'm paying my expenses, I'm bringing in some element of growth, and then I'm going to get a bigger team. But that's pretty much about it. Okay, and that's why you see even companies, none of the, how many companies in the SME sector are actually planning to go IPO, though we have a specific focus to allow people to go in the SME segment also to go IPO, how many people have really applied for it? And there's a huge struggle to get people to, understand how this value can be built and how can you actually convert your company shares as your assets for bringing in money. It is like a currency that you can treat your shares, but that mindset itself does not exist. Okay, so it's a huge uphill task even for the coach to actually shift this mindset, and that's exactly what Sanjay is alluding to. So the discipline exists, but not to the extent because there is no vision of being able to grow phenomenal where I can actually take the company public, because mere pardada ne, mere father ne jo business create kiya hai, I'm just going to grow that a little bit more. And even if you have some of the kids go abroad, study, come back here, they are going to bring in new ideas and infuse the company with new strategies, but then it's the parents who keep telling them, you don't try to now change the entire company. Okay, keep all of the stuff that you've learned aside. This is exactly how we should be running. So there's this big tussle, and we have to work through all of this.
I better be a good manager of my business rather than a new leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this big tussle that happens, which is very unlike startups, right? Because startups will start an organization with the idea of solving a problem. They have a clear vision. They want to go and really make it big. They know and what's going on in their mind is, how can I be a unicorn? That's all that they're thinking. Yeah. So it's a completely different mindset in the SME. So I think it's not fair to really say that, there's no financial discipline and we all need to beat people up and say, okay, get the financial discipline in place. No, it's going to take us a little while, I think, step by step. But I see the change happening for sure. So if you ask me, what changes I'm seeing in some of my customers, so I predominantly coach software organizations. Okay. And this is one of the industries that definitely is very proactive in terms of and open-minded also, to see how we can attract more and more funding coming in from other investors. And 3 of my clients have recently raised funding.
Great.
Okay, so I can see the change that's happening. Actually, we can see the change that's happening, but we still have a long way to go. I think it's going to be, we have to just stick to it, be very, very, very persistent and consistent. That's my view.
So, thank you, Tavish. And I'll pick up on what you talked about, building value, and throw this question to Sanjay, and then maybe Gaurav also can chime in. So Sanjay, this question is really about building value and how can SMEs look at really not just, let's say, their city or their region or even the country. What can they see on a larger, bigger canvas? And how do you think, as coaches, we can help them see that canvas and really put a vision in front? And then maybe once you've sort of thrown your thoughts, maybe Gaurav can also love to hear Gaurav's thoughts also on this.
Okay, thanks, Ratish. So I'd just like to put it in context, so if you look at a little bit of history, so we had that, post-independence, we had that little bit of a license Raj story, right? So there were these 4 or 5 big businesses, and most small and medium business owners set up shop to serve these larger businesses. And most times their vision was limited to, I'll serve the local market, and this. There were very few companies at that time thinking global at all. So we have come with that mindset, and along the way now we have grown, and now is the time where when I see new startups, they start talking about the addressable market in the whole globe, which is a wonderful change to see. But that's the Generation Y doing that. The Generation X, like some of you have pointed out, that's still in that old sort of comfort zone, right? So one important aspect that needs to be taken care of when we are coaching people is the mindset. Are they dreaming big enough? Is the vision big enough? Are they not dissatisfied with where they are currently? Just being a small fish in a small pond, or a big fish in a small pond, when you could very well be a giant fish in a giant pond. And India, actually, if you want to keep that tryst with destiny of $5 trillion and all that, the Thermax MD was at Mr. Onni Krishnan at that time. Now he was saying that there need to be 1,000 more Thermaxes to be created. And he gave the story of how Thermax was a SME so many years back. And he was pointing to all the SME audience and saying, some of you guys need to step up and start thinking that the big picture. So that is one aspect, that we come from this historical thing of thinking only local and thinking only for India. And India itself is a big market, and the whole world is making a beeline for it. I accept that, but we need those export dollars too. So we need to really kind of take our place in the global arena. So that's one part which I definitely want. When I'm talking to my customers, when we talk about getting out of the comfort zone, running an operation so I've got enough for myself and 2-3 generations. Why should I do it? So getting them out of that mindset and saying, you have to answer somewhere that did you live up to your full potential? Did you have the potential to create 100,000 more jobs? Just look at some of the leading lights. At one point in time, even Reliance Industries was a SME, right? Now just look at what Mukesh Ambani is projecting out. Next 10 years, he's saying $200 billion. So why can't we start thinking as big as some of these guys? It's a giant company, agreed, but it started with very humble beginnings. We should look to the leading lights, the Thermaxes of the world, the Reliances of the world, and say, these SMEs which need to go there. And now, from a value perspective, one is the valuation of the company. Valuation of the company will only happen if the business really runs without you, Mr. Business Owner. If the business runs only when the business owner is there, then they will get a multiple of whatever is the business owner's valuation in the market multiplied by 5 or 6. But if it's really running without the business owner, and that's what is the focus with Action Coach, that you create your business itself should become a product which people will want to invest in. And that's where the value unlocking will happen. That's where the hard slog you put in, from getting the financial discipline in, to the sales and marketing in, to the systems, and then building a great team, you will start unlocking value thereafter when the growth happens and you finally decide to go IPO. That methodology, if it is followed, then the value unlocking for the SME is assured. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
One part, Ratish, is the mindset. That has to change, and sometimes very difficult to. So somebody's a king in his own domain. There's nobody telling him that he's doing right, wrong. Unless there's somebody external who comes in and tells him, "Bhai, kar kya hai tu?" Right? And potential kya hai aapke business ka? Until somebody holds that mirror to him and the light to him and shows him a different way of looking at his business, he's not going to change. The second aspect is abhi karna kya hai. So with these two aspects together, the value unlock will happen.
Great. Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah. And now let me throw the ball to Gaurav, because Gaurav has been instrumental in helping businesses multiply with his franchisee route, and I'm sure he has a lot of insights on this side of things. So Gaurav.
Thank you, Ratish. I think good points put by Sanjay in terms of when you're building value, you need to be very clear what is the direction, and sometimes MSMEs are not very defined from the direction. One good point he really put on, which I got myself experienced. One of the companies I run was actually valued by a very large multinational, and the CEO flew especially on a private jet with his 5 other colleagues to meet me and my younger brother, and we had discussion, and in the evening we had dinner, and after dinner he says, I feel that this business would be very difficult to run without you, and they called off the deal because he felt that I was so important for that business that it cannot be done. So one of the points which Sanjay has really done is that how do you make the business owner himself redundant in his own business? That is the time you build value. It's very, very important. It's very difficult for MSME from a mindset viewpoint to become redundant in their own business, that they're no more needed in their own business, right? So that's art of 3 of the top coaches we have in Action, which are on the panel. You 3 are actually best at that in terms of doing this for enterprises and helping them to achieve that, which is a great thing to achieve because they have better life in life to do better things and focus on more strategic things rather than in the business roles. But going into further on that, different stages, a company would have to see a different valuation case. Sometimes I would get a company which has a great product, and I said, pick up that product, stay focused on that, and do a full life journey of this. Don't try to go and spread thin yourself and try to do that. Create a product leadership. There would be somebody who needs it deeply, and you will be able to be a great entry point or a market entry for that product. There would be another company which creates a entry barrier, right? So they not let anybody. Now, a lot of MSMEs I work with, I say, don't spread thin. Don't go everywhere. Try to take maybe a state or a city. Go deeper into that. Create an entry barrier. In the times when the organized retail was happening, I got a lot of companies sold to, I used to target who would buy. And I used to tell a company and say, go out and just build this in this region and create so much that eventually Kishorji has to buy you out or somebody else has to buy you out. Or so very clearly, like these days, healthcare is like that. So any company which is reasonably sized and has some kind of a replacement value, there would be somebody bigger who would come and pick it up. I say never fight the elephant, collaborate. So there is an elephant already there. If you are good in something which you need to do that, you just go and collaborate with that. And then there are companies which have genuine innovation, a disruptive product. They have a different life journey. And I feel that if they continue to paddle their innovation and continue to do that, they would have a different life journey. And then this global market is a scale. You cannot limit yourself. You can take it to any market and take that piece. And also, it's also speed of your innovation, how cyclic your innovation is, how you continue to really keep the consumer excited about what you're creating and delivering the promise and so on and so forth. And also, I'll tell you, sometimes people just don't understand that the businesses are no more same. All these unicorns you see, if you go back and see their core business which they started from and what they are known for now has significantly changed also. Right. By the time the larger promise would be there, and they would be honest about some basic principles of the business which they were doing it. The way they are addressing the communities and addressing their consumer would have significantly changed. Flipkart was a bookseller online. Now what they sell on the entire thing. By the time they stay the principle of being an online e-commerce company, they are fine. So I think that also creates a value creation. Value creation, I think, is all about really building a foundation for an organization to be ready for eventually creating earnings for shareholders. This is one thing which I tell everybody. I say you can circle around, but eventually business would be valued only and then when they ultimately deliver earnings for shareholders. That's the ultimate game of the business, right? So but it can be journey. You can still not be doing that, but you have a foundationally ready, but you can do a 5-year horizon or a 10-year horizon, say at a 10-year life cycle, I'll deliver a great earnings for my shareholders and so on. So you will continue to ride the valuation right and continue to happen that. But I think Indian SMEs have a great potential, huge potential. Some have legacy brands, some have very strong foundational capabilities, and they need to really step up and say, let's move into the next journey and where Action Coach can really help.
Thank you, Varun. And exciting discussions happening. I have one more interesting area to touch before I come to the questions that are really coming in thick and fast. So, and this one really is about people. When I look at and when I speak to my clients that I coach, and I ask them, let's hire people, and then the challenge becomes, how do I hire the best people, and then how do I retain them? And it's a constant discussion between me and my clients, people who I coach, entrepreneurs who I coach, as to, hey, you're telling me to hire the best. How am I going to retain these people, and for how long will they carry on with me? So let me go to Tabish on this and hear from her, because she's working in the software domain and a lot of her clients are in that domain. I'm sure there's battle for talent out there. So Tabish, over to you.
Yeah, so Ratish, I think एकदम दुखते रग पे अपने हाथ रख दिया. Absolutely. I mean, I think the shortage of talent is real, and it's not just about there's a shortage of candidates for employment. That part there is abundance, but what is really short is qualified, experienced talent is definitely in shortage. Okay, so for every vacancy that an organization opens up, there is no dearth of applicants applying. Okay, we do get a huge flood of resumes coming in, and people will apply, and there's a big churn that happens. But what is really short is, and you'll hear every other entrepreneur talk about this. So as a business coach, I mean, I talk to 5 people, 5 new entrepreneurs every single week, and each one of them is basically talking to me about their challenge of how they're struggling to get people on board, and really qualified people to do exactly the job that they have. Now, this is a real challenge, and I looked at so many different surveys to find out, is this just happening in India? Is this in Pune? Is this very local to an industry, or what? And I read up so many articles, and there've been discussions that are going on exactly this topic. So Gartner had originally predicted that there's going to be a massive gap, and specifically a tech talent gap. Okay, right in 2008. Again, they published another article in a review that came out in 2017, again in 2019. And we're talking about in India. I know the most recent article that came in the Economic Times also was that there's a shortage of about 2 lakh candidates. There are vacancies already open. And I think that 2 lakh count is actually a little, underemphasized. I think there is phenomenal more jobs that are opening up.
Sure.
But when I look at the software industry, if you see, and COVID has made it even more tougher. Look at the absorption of tech talent today. It's not just in the software industry. Okay, because software, everybody wants to get digital. Every industry wants to go digital, right? You look at McDonald's; they're talking about being a tech company which also delivers pizza. Yeah, we're expecting manufacturing to go the digital way in a very big way, because otherwise they're not going to be sustainable. So they've got to ensure that we're on the journey for Industry 4.0. So we have IoT being infused in a really big way. So this tech talent is not just getting absorbed within the software industry. It's all across in all different industries. This talent is in demand. Now, technology is changing pretty much every day. There are some great minds who are working on ensuring that there is a new offering on an ongoing basis, because we are looking at how can we solve the newer problems that are coming up. So we have new technologies, we have AI, we have ML, and all kinds of things that are coming out, but we don't have people who are being educated on these new technologies. There is a big gap in terms of how we are churning, the speed at which technology is being rolled out at a commercial level. At that particular speed, we are not rolling out talent from colleges, from educational institutes, or even training for that matter, specifically in the SME. Okay, so who's training people? Who's educating them? So if you look at ML, machine learning, or artificial intelligence, huge demand. But how many people are actually training them? Or how many people in an SME are actually getting trained on these new technologies? We don't have the time. We don't have the bandwidth. We can't do it. And I'm not as far-sighted to say, okay, let me start the training today. Okay, so this tech talent is real. Now, the question is, how do we actually address this tech talent? I think that's what you were alluding to, Ratish, saying, okay, how do we solve this? So I don't have a magic wand to give and say, okay, this is what you apply, this is a magic formula you apply, and it's going to go away. But I think we can pretty much look at it. What do I do on a short term, and what do I do, like on a long term basis, to ensure that we don't get into this situation again? So I break this down into short term and long term. So short term, what do I need to do? One, I need to keep looking out for people constantly. There's no, you can't stop. So looking for talent is like diamond mining. That's what I say, and I teach all of my customers as well. Okay, so a diamond is to reach to a diamond, you actually have to sift through the muck, and you can't give up. So don't give up on your effort. A lot of people stop before they've actually hit the diamond. They're on the right path, but they kind of give up because they feel, okay, this is too much of work. I've been looking. So earlier to, fill a position, it used to take you, about a month, 30 days flat to close vacancies. Today, that duration has gone anything between 80 to 90 days to just identify. Forget about, the actual person joining. But to nail a person down, roll out a concrete offer, and the person accepting it, the time duration has just significantly gone up, and we kind of give up in between. So that's number one. I think persistent. You have to keep looking. You have to keep going. The second thing in the short term that I think that everybody should be doing is ensuring that you are re-looking at the criteria that you have set for selection. Okay, earlier days, we always had all job descriptions critically analyzing the candidate's educational background and calling out specifically saying, I want only computer science graduates. I want only engineers to be coming in. But guys, today, coding is something that everybody has to learn. It's like your reading and writing skills now. It's no longer, the prerogative of just a few software engineers. So there are so many other science graduates who are learning coding, and coding is being taught by so many other commercial institutes. Use them, trust that these guys may be able to do a good job. Try them out, give them an opportunity. So bring down your criteria, relook at your job description to see what is my criteria. Is that creating a constraint for me in the first place? Two, always, on the job description, don't expect God all the time. The criteria is so tight knit that everybody wants God. You want Sachin Tendulkar for even the gully cricket that you're playing. Okay, you don't need that.
Well said. Yeah.
So look at even Google. If you look at Google, the vast majority, and this is published public data, okay, that Google has tremendous tech talent already within their organization because they can afford to attract them, right? There's a big, huge, they can attract the best talent in the world, but unfortunately they have, excessively qualified people in roles where they really don't need such qualified people. And that is something that is also plaguing even small industries, small companies. We want the best at everything. So relook at your job description. So one, be persistent, keep going. Relook at your job descriptions to see whether, are you going over the board and expecting the moon? Can I bring that down to quickly fill my position? Okay, that's one thing. Be very specific in the skill level that you really require to solve the problem. Okay, when you look at job descriptions, people say, I want a 15-year-old experienced person. I want a 5-year experienced person. But what does that 5-year really mean? There must be a level at which they're solving a problem. If you can articulate that problem instead saying you can do this, I think that's a much better position than just to say I want a 5 years experienced person. No, you're not going to ML, AI. How can you get such a person who's that experienced in it in bigger numbers? Not possible. So please relook at those criteria. On a long-term basis, I think there are very clear two aspects to look at. One thing, we're going to have to look at employee engagement in a very serious manner. Okay, and there is a methodology. There is a clear methodology that can be applied, and we coach on employee engagement. How do you build that in the right way? So employee engagement needs to happen such that retention can be, you're going to be able to raise the bar and keep people for longer. Because today, the millennials that are coming up, their expectation is very different from what it was in the yesteryears, the baby boomers. Okay, so how do I handle? So business owners, we have to learn, how do I really engage with my employee base, which means engagement doesn't come with just giving high salaries. It just doesn't come with giving them amazing projects to work with. It comes with how much emotionally we are vested in. You'll always see historically, people will say, those people who worked with me earlier and have been there with me for a really long time always stick with us. They don't go. But it's this new lot that comes in, they just seem to be disappearing very fast. There's huge attrition. So we've got to look at ensuring that we have employee engagement as a very clear strategy, and we are deep diving and doing something about it in concrete. Second long-term strategy, look at creating forecasts of people. There must be rolling plans that you are able to generate well in advance, because it takes 3 months for you to get somebody on board. You can't wait till you've already landed a project on your lap and saying, I want the person like now tomorrow.
I have a pipeline ready. Yeah.
Have a pipeline. And forecasts cannot be created unless you are thinking about your business, how I'm going to run it and what are the results that I want on a long-term basis. So unless you come out of this short-term thinking, you will not be able to solve this problem. Okay, so these are the
Great.
two aspects that I can, really think of that people should be looking
Lovely,
at:
lovely.
short-term and long-term. That's how we'll come out.
Thank you, Davesh. Thank you. And I'll pick up on your diamond thing, because once you've found the diamond, you actually need to work on shining it and polishing it. Really work for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and while on this, there's a very interesting question. The question is from Varidhi Singh. It says the pandemic has changed the way we look at selecting trained and experienced manpower. How to find the right manpower in this post-COVID era? I think you've sort of answered it, but if you want to add quickly another 30 seconds, anything more that you want to add to this question?
So in the pandemic, what has happened is, a lot of options have suddenly opened up for people because we are now allowing, we've accepted that work from home is a reality, and we're going to have to adjust to it. Okay, so people are comfortable working from home. So you've opened up the geography. So it's a pro and a con. Because we've opened up geography, somebody who's in Calcutta does not necessarily have to apply for a job in Calcutta. Okay, they can apply for a job in Mumbai, they can apply for a job in Delhi, and so on and so forth. Okay, and that means there is hell lot of competition for the business owner in terms of creating an offer for an employee. If the person is an A player, all the more tough for you to be able to attract that kind of candidate, unless there's something that we can offer them which clearly tells them, where you have sold the idea that this is an amazing company and that you should be working with me. Most of the times we want an awesome A player to join our organization without looking at whether will the person really love working for me.
Good question. And that's a great question to think. Yeah.
Why would the person want to work with you and not consider someone else? So yes, they're going to take an offer from you. They will take an offer from you and then go and look at some other offer that they've actually got. They would want to compare it because it is feelings. It's an emotion. I want to be working with the best organization, isn't it? Why would a candidate want to work for the second best or the third best organization in their mind? In their mind. So we've got to be able to create influence on the mind of that candidate. Are we really putting that effort? You look at how many HR people are actually spending time with the candidate, getting them on board on the company. I've asked some of my customers to actually record what their HR is talking to candidates, and we've come back with horrendous stuff. People are saying the candidate is asking, okay, so tell me a little more about your organization, and they say, why don't you go to the website and take a look?
Yeah.
Take a look at the website, and everything is laid out there. Or I'll just send you, I'll send you a company profile. You take a look at it, and we'll come back. Guys, no, you can't be doing that.
Sure. Great, Davesh. Thank you.
Small nuances. Yeah.
I'll also pick up on very interesting comment that you had, where you said we are a tech company, we also sell burgers. And I'll bounce this ball to Sanjay. And really, it's about technology adoption, right? It's about when I tell any of clients that I coach, hey, let's go digital. And the first thing they'll say, sir, digital marketing to hum kar rahe hain na. It's what's the difference between going digital and technology adoption? And really, Sanjay, would love your thoughts on this as to how do you look at technology adoption and how can MSMEs really ride on it?
Yeah, thank you, Tabish. Thank you, Ratish. So this technology adoption piece, I have some live examples here in Pune, where guys are investing in very huge sums in plants which are integrated with IoT, where they can run. So Industry 4.0, there's, so there was that evolution, right, where people had an accounting software and then some bespoke software. Then they went into ERPs, and ERPs at that time, I'm talking as a gradual progression. gradual progression in the sense when you had ERP hosted at site, it was very expensive. Then to ERP, which is now on the cloud, and ERP and CRM, which is on the cloud. Now people are moving to the next one, where they're saying that, okay, now I want to, especially in the COVID situation where they saw that the labor went back to their native villages, and there was a labor shortage, at least in the city of Pune and around here. It must be the same all across. So they said, where can we automate bits within the, so if I cut it into two parts, one is the sales and marketing part and one is the operations part of any business.
Yeah, Sanjay, just we need to be mindful of the time. We are coming around the hour, so let's quick short so that we can hopefully wrap up.
Yeah. So
and I have one more question of Gaurav before I let him go.
Yeah. So the automation piece at the operation level is something I've seen happening myself over here. Some people are doing it semi automation. Some are going full-fledged. On the marketing side, it's more hyped up in terms of digital marketing and marketing automation. We ourselves use a marketing automation tool which has really helped streamline the whole sales and marketing process. So, and I'm seeing that adoption happening with, especially when in the COVID situation, people realized that a lot of people are going to be online, so they made use of, but you have to balance how you're doing it. So there's so on the digital marketing piece, there's enough material on that aspect, whether you're doing paid SEO, AdWords, that kind of combination. How are you driving leads, whether you're using a B2B site like IndiaMart or Trade India, or you're selling your products globally to a B2C site like Amazon or Alibaba or what have you. There's enough material to use technology for small and medium businesses to really disrupt. And the disruptions we are seeing ourselves, the larger disruptions are Ola, Uber coming in and disrupting the taxi space, Oyo and Airbnb coming in and disrupting the hotel space. So technology adoption, there is no choice but to adopt technology, friends. So you need to change and adopt. And of course, when you're thinking the bigger picture that you want to really serve the global marketplace, without technology, that's not going to happen. On both sides, on the delivery side as well as the sales and marketing side.
Great.
So that's my
Thank you.
on it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjay. So I'll take the last two questions, and first question goes to Gaurav. This is from Ankit Kapoor. Gaurav, in your view, don't you think traditional investor would still stick to MSME as compared to startups? And what has been the latest take on it by the banks? Gaurav, probably 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and we do the last question.
Sure. So I think there's no one answer to this. I saw Ankit's comment on that. I mean, I think investor has become very smart today and also making right choices of scalability and value creation. And I think that's something, if an promising MSME demonstrates that, obviously it will attract. And a startup is obviously a great theory for investors because they don't work on dividends. Investors largely don't work on dividends. Banks are a very different viewpoint on that. The banks want return on capital, but investors work on equity
value
multiple.
creation. Value creation.
Value creation and equity multiple. So they don't even bother if you are making losses, but by the time the value is being built by what they've subscribed, and every stage you can demonstrate that, they would come after it. I think India has a very strong MSME focus, but it needs change of mindset and change of the way we look at our businesses and scale our businesses. And that's where Action Coach really helps. So I'll have to be excused, Ritesh. I would go on another webinar. And
Thank you
very much. Thank you very much for being part of it.
Thank you. So last question to Tabish and Sanjay, and this is from Neha Mehta. We are a fashion jewelry startup selling online in marketplaces like Nykaa and online websites. Question: with customers not stepping out due to COVID, demand for fashion jewelry as its lowest, what should a brand like us be focusing on in the short term and the long term? Get an Action Coach, I would say first thing, but having said that, I'll let Tabish and Sanjay throw more light on this one.
Yeah, so I'll probably take that question, Ratish.
Yeah.
being the lady. I think
Sure.
yes, yes, it is reality that the fashion industry, specifically fashion jewelry industry, has kind of taken a hit because it's not something which is essential. It is an extra add-on, but I think this is a lull that's not going to remain forever. Okay, it's a short term dip that's happened. If you see, as soon as the markets opened up, and I'm from Pune, and I think as soon as the markets opened up here in Pune, there's been a almost spike in people shopping. You'll see again the malls were flooded. I visited, Sephora day before yesterday because I had to immediately go and pick some of the cosmetics. I was just waiting for the shop to open. So I think it's not that the demand has been wiped off completely. It's a temporary masked dip.
It's a shift.
It's a temporary thing that's happening. Please hang in there, Neha, and I think you're going to be back in business really fast. You're absolutely spot on by being online, and Nika's doing a phenomenal job in terms of promoting their products. I've done all of my shopping online. I'm sure a lot of people will, or a lot of women will continue to shop online, and it's a temporary phase. We're going to come out of it, so just hang in there. That's my feedback.
Thank you, Kamish. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Mansi.
Great. Thank you so much. I think this is a wonderful session. It could not have been any better. I think everyone has given such comments and such lovely insights into, how an SME or an MSME builds themselves up and also takes it forward from there to adding value themselves, and of course, hanging in there ultimately. So thank you, everybody. I would like to, I think we can now go ahead and close this session. Maybe we can have like a one-liner from everybody, a quick comment to end this on this lovely World MSME Day. And of course, I thank all of our audiences to be watching in from everywhere that you are. And so I will first hand it over to Tabish for final comments.
Thank you so much, Mansi, and Ratish and Satish for having me here. I thoroughly enjoyed being here. One specific thing that I'd like to share with the rest of the audience who's watching us is to give out a clear call out saying, guys, if you need, if you are struggling with any, if it's the smallest problem, you need professional help, please raise your hand and seek out that professional help. Don't just sit with the problem with yourself, attempting to solve it again and again and again. There is, a whole bunch of professional services that are available to suit your pocket, to suit exactly what you're trying to solve. And we've done this numerous times. So not just, within the three of us, I'm not saying you just reach out to us. Any coach, please go out, reach out to people, reach out for support. Just like we say, if you have a medical condition, reach out. Exactly the same. If you have a challenge in your business, please reach out. And there's a lot of support available. Do take that. That's my...
Thank you, Sabish. Going to Sanjay sir.
Sorry?
Going to you for final comments. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So thank you again for this, this wonderful session. This is one of the few I've been on. So it was a nice experience for me. So what I would like to leave people with is that there is a fundamental way that you build a good business. And like Tabish said, there are professionals who can guide you in building that business. And our definition is, in Action Coach, is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. So you should be building, if the business is only running when you are there, then it's not really a business. So friends, if you're struggling on any of the areas related to sales and marketing, related to a business plan, related to finances, related to delivery, related to hiring a good team or systems, you could reach out to one of us. There's 37 of us all across India, and Action Coach India is the website of the company. You can reach out to, and like Tabish mentioned, there's a range of products and services available. We'd be delighted to have a cup of tea and discuss these specific questions you have with you, and address those areas to your satisfaction. So, of course, in such a forum, we can't go very deep into that. So we'd invite people to reach out to us. That's what I'd like to say, and hand it back to you, Mansi.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And finally, coming to our moderator, I think thank you so much. It was great help and a great job done. And I would now hand it over to you for your final comments, sir.
Thank you, Mansi, and really it was a pleasure. I'd love to thank Gaurav. He's unfortunate to leave for another webinar, but love to thank Gaurav, Tabish, and Sanjay, and of course, Action Coach. This session was fantastic for me. As coaches, you're always learning, and this was a learning session for me too. Having said that, I would say entrepreneurs would really do well if they, in their minds, position themselves away from their business. And if you treat your business as a product, believe me, value creation will come, and you will be able to see your business in a far more different fashion. So your business goals and your personal goals are two different things. Drive yourself accordingly. And that's what I would say. That is where Action Coach comes in. You basically a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. And as soon as you start thinking without you, then your business becomes a product for you. And then you can be a true entrepreneur investing in multiple businesses and looking at stuff in a very different fashion. With that, great. Thank you, Mansi, for letting all of us be here and share our thoughts. Phenomenal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for being here with us today, for sharing these lovely insights. And I hope you all stay tuned for more such insightful roundtables that will come. Will be a weekly thing that we do on our live pages. Thank you all for watching in, and I hope you all stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.